Now we'll have a industry presentation by Mr. Gaurav Kanwal, Head of SMB and Channel Sales South Asia Adobe Systems. And then we'll have a presentation by Ms. Jyoti Agarwal, Managing Director, Arjun Toys. And then we'll have a roundtable session on technology accessibility in the classroom. I request Mr. Gaurav Kanwal to come on stage. A big round of applause for him.
Right. Can you all hear me? Ladies and gentlemen, very good afternoon on a little bit of a hot and sultry day in Delhi. So great discussions. I hope you don't mind if I move around here. I was, kind of a teacher's nightmare when I was in school. I was the restless child in the class, right? So if you have children like me in the class and you keep wondering, yaar, iska kya hoga aage, okay? So you're looking at their future right now, right? So probably 20 years hence from when they get out of your class. Right, can we have a little few lights in the back? I can't really see the people, and it'll be good to have a little bit of a view there. Right. So I was listening to the discussions, and so many principles in one room. Honestly, after so many years, still scares a little bit, right? I make on an average about 100 presentations a year to boards of directors, to the CEOs. And honestly, my hands are shivering right now because I am in front of my teachers. So, pardon a little bit of fumbling here or there, but let's move on, given the paucity of time. So, I heard a lot of discussions about trust, about collaboration, about learning environment, about unlearning of the teachers and relearning. And how do we make the students retain what they're learning, right? Am I missing out on something? How do we make them, the new smart class, right? Gives teachers the aids from a visual perspective that makes kids remember things, right? We'll take it one step further. Let's talk a little more about it. So we've seen, the digital transformation today when we look at the mobile environment in India. It's move away from the PC, right? We don't use the internet only in the computer. There are more people who use it on the mobile phone than on the computer. Everybody is on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, Snapchat, and whatnot. How many people here have seen Snapchat? You've seen. How many of you are users of Snapchat? No one, right? How many of you were born after 1990? Right. I knew the answer. Now, those things are designed in a way that nobody who's born before 1990 is capable of understanding this. Honestly, I've tried. I'm in the industry for the last so many years, and I have tried my hand at it. I do not understand it. Right? But that's the difference, right? In the connected world, the way the things are changing. Your students today are the digital natives, right? They understand technology and adapt to technology much faster than what we can fathom. Would you agree? Right? And just take a look at this slide. This is the learning curve. Sorry, it's just not looking very nice on this one, but yeah. So let's look at that. How much time it took for people to adapt to things versus how much time it's taking now onto the newer things. The lines are practically vertical. From an angle of a 40, 50, 60 degree, it's going to an angle of 88, 89, right? That's what we're talking about. Now, I generally don't use this terminology, but since I'm sure there are a few maths teachers, I want to make them proud of me. Hence, I'm using the angles here. But let's look at this. How is that working? Okay, let me give an example. We used to have, when I was growing up, we used to have a CRT TV, right? The cathode ray tube. For ages, we used to have a CRT. Then suddenly came plasma. 5 years later came LCD. 2 years later came LED. See the pace of innovation? Right? Now, India as a country, we are known to leapfrog technologies. There was a time when it was a challenge to get a landline phone at home, right? You had to give an application that I am a heart patient, and please, I can have a heart attack any moment, so please give me a landline phone. Then came pagers. How long were pagers existent in India? Hardly what, a year, two, right? And then came cell phones in the mid-90s, mid to late 90s. We leapfrogged an entire technology. We did not use pagers. And we're known to do that. We've done that in multiple fields, right? What was the difference between 2G and 4G? And now we're talking about 5G. I was reading an article in yesterday's newspaper where there's this Asian association where the government is actually sending people to China to learn more about the 5G technology so that the government can put in place the formal rules for it. We barely covered 4G. How many people actually get 4G all the time on your phone? Right? So we're leapfrogging technologies. And we're doing that in the education space as well. Because that's what we need to teach our children. I heard somebody said that 90% of our engineers are unemployable. Right? Are we teaching the employable skills to our children? Or are we concentrating on rote learning? I know we aren't, because all of you said that you want to take it away from there. I heard a term called level playing field. Are we giving a level playing field to a shy child who doesn't really speak up much in the class, is not very communicative, versus somebody who's really outspoken? That's where the difference is, right? So when we look at the future goals and we talk about the skill development of the children, what we're looking at, there are these 4 C's that we typically talk about. Critical thinking. One word that came up over and over and over again in the last discussion was collaboration. Communication. If you cannot communicate effectively, you are nowhere, right? And creativity. Agree? Have I missed out of any C or E? Now, but the change, the way we talk to the children in each of the grades, what is, as a teacher or as an educator, what is your expectation? What is it that you want to teach? In grade 3 to 5, it's very, very different. In grade 3 to 5, you're teaching them the social skills, the basic skills, confidence, patience, right? Small kids have very little patience. They want to run around here and there. Their focus, you're teaching them how to focus on certain things. However, the focus changes the moment the kid goes in the age group of in a higher age group. In class 6 to 8, you're talking about a demonstration through a process. How do you do that, right? How do you actually support an idea with an evidence, right? There's an idea that's already there in the book on the table as a concept. How are you actually proving it, right? And then learning and expressing it. The moment a child grows a little more, so if you look at this example, it's supporting ideas with evidence to expressing a point of view, right? That changes. How do you express a specific point of view? How do you have an original idea? And how do you back it up with more evidence and support, right? More writing and communication. Perseverance, extremely important. And the moment we go into higher education, it's a completely different thing. We're talking about leadership, we're talking about entrepreneurship, we're talking about time management, right? So those are the kind of things that you're already teaching. These are the basics of education which are already inculcated in the education system. That's how our education system is defined. The moment we move on, so when we say that what is creativity's role in the learning process? We've seen the learning process for each of these grades very, very briefly in a nutshell. But how does creativity help them, right? So we are talking about teaching, absorbing, internalizing, and demonstrating. What are these things? First, we are actually teaching the children what creativity is all about. How do you convey an idea, right? The moment we start absorbing it, that's where the key comes. Will a child absorb a concept by you teaching it to the child, or when the child does it himself or herself? Creative. So let me give you an example. If you we make children do project work, make diagrams, right, to color things. Unfortunately, in our education system, the moment we say creativity, we go to arts most of the time. We don't think that creativity is creativity of ideas, not really drawing or design only, right? So let me put it a basic example. Let's say atomic fusion. The concept, probably I studied in class 7, right? If I were to ask a child to create an atomic fusion animated diagram, 40 children in a class, every single one will color uranium in a different color. Every single one will have a different design to it. But there is a sense of absorption of the concept rather than creating 3 circles, with a compass and a scale, right? Then the best part that comes in is internalization of that thing, right? Because it allows a child to show his or her own perspective when creating a thing. Rather than learning, when they're creating that content. Now, a lot of schools, I'm sure a lot of your schools also use a lot of digital e-learning content to convey an idea so that the child can visualize it rather than learn it. But the moment you're giving the child to create the content, you're taking that to a different level, right? And then the final thing is the key thing on demonstrating. How many children now, I've seen every class has 4 or 5 children who are very vocal, who always volunteer to present, who always want to talk, right? How do you give every child that opportunity to communicate and be in the limelight for the next 5 minutes, 2 minutes, 1 minute? How do you break them out of that shell? If I'm unable to express my ideas, what good is an idea? It's just going to die with me. So that's the creativity's process, role in the entire learning process, right? Now, when we look at, again, break it down by the grades and the classes. Class 3 to 5, it's just fun, it's engaging, it makes things memorable, right? And very important part is pride in the outcome. I have created this. When we go home, the child, 3-year-old, 4-year-old makes a drawing. Papa, I made this. Put it on the fridge. Why? Because it's my pride in my child, right? That's what it is. How do you make that child get that pride within the class itself as a part of the growing up outside of the home? Problem solving. The moment the child grows up, it helps with the problem solving skills. Learning. History. We've all studied history. The biggest pain point, remembering dates. What good is it? Now, rather than write a paragraph on India's struggle for freedom, what if a child was to create a very nice picture-driven timeline, starting with the mutiny of 1857 till India's freedom in 1947, covering the main points like Jallianwala Bagh, Quit India movement, and so on and so forth. Do you think a child would probably remember the dates better? Yes? No? Absolutely. So that's the point. It forces critical thinking because the child is creating it rather than looking at it, right? You grow up further. It gave, a lot of these things. How do we take them away from that pressure of exams and marks? It's an essential part of our ecosystem. However, we still need to give them a little bit of a more level playing field. So we're talking about it's empowering. It just gives them a little bit of a break from the rigidity of the system. They will still have to take the board exams. They will still have to write those examinations. But how are we training them to be ready for that? Rather than coming under the stress and the pressure that they come under today, right? And then higher education, I won't delve much on this, but all of these things will prepare the child for the real world in a much better and a more confident person who's actually getting into the real world with a more creative bent of mind and a better thinking environment. Now, how does the student receive this? What are the strongest challenges that we see here? Any thoughts? In the junior classes, say up to class 8, it's primarily teaching driven. You will have to guide them, you will have to sometimes spoon feed them in terms of how to go about it. But you already do it. It's just that you're providing them more tools. The moment a child grows up with that environment, he or she takes that into their own hands, right? So that's where the actual creativity starts to come out. That's where the caterpillar starts becoming a butterfly, right? And starts to spread its wings. And that's the key difference in creating this kind of an ecosystem in our schools for the education system, right? Now, all of you have been trying to do this. We know it. Because this is something not something that I thought of or my company thought of. This is what you've told us. These are the results of a research. This is what all of you have told us, right? So when we look at the advent of digital age, what are the use cases? How do we actually use this in our school ecosystem, right? So let's look at this. We make the dioramas in school, skits, models, game boards in the early in the early stages, which are very, very basic in their usage. The project work that we give them is simplistic, not very complicated, not something where parents have to do it. And then it starts to get more tougher, but they're already prepared for it. So by class 9th to 12th, they're already making multimedia presentations, which are not only PowerPoint, which encompass. How many of your students have actually built their own websites? They have, right? How many of the students today are building apps? Right? They are. How many of the schools have actually taught them how to do it on a regular basis as a part of, not the curriculum, but as a part of the education system? Are we? We aren't, right? So are we really preparing them? See, we've seen that one well-designed app can disrupt an entire industry. Uber, right? One app, an entire industry is disrupted, and that's the real world. And that's where we come in, because we have that connect with the industry and the education space. How are we incorporating all of that into our education system? How are we helping them get into the real world with a bang? With that confidence that they get out of school and they're already employable, rather than depending on 5 children who take an initiative on their own, do the coding or do a designing, right? So let's look at a few more things. When we create projects, there is a huge difference in digital and non-digital. Everything today is digital. The world is moving towards digital, AI, machine learning. We learn about virtual reality and so on and so forth. That's where the world is going. There are professions today, like, answered that there was no Google 10 years back, there was no Microsoft in schools, there was nothing. Kids didn't know how to use the mouse. Today, the jobs that existed 10 years back aren't there. The jobs that are today here won't be there 10 years from now. 5 years back, 7 years back, if I was in this room, if I would have asked you how many people have a smartphone, probably 5 hands would have gone up. Today, we talked to the industry. I was talking to the owners of one of the newspapers. Said, I'm going to scale down my print because digital is giving me better money. And it makes commercial sense. They have a diaspora, Indian diaspora, which speaks that language outside of India, that I reach out to them much faster and better. And I'm able to give more content cheaper with a lesser distribution cost online. Make sense? Are we preparing them? There are a huge number of things that we can do on the digital part than non-digital. Let's look at photography. 10% of all the photographs that exist today were taken in the last 1 year. Last 1 year, 10% of all photographs globally. Everybody takes photos with their smartphones, makes videos, edits them, does whatever, right? How would it be if we were to actually use that to help them learn more? Like to do that, right? So if you look at some of the use cases here on what they can do with web and or digital versus the limitations of non-digital. You can't create a website non-digital, right? You can't create an app. Can you make a multimedia presentation? Would you expect a child to use the slides that we used to have a lamp we used to project? We don't do that anymore because everything is moved to the digital space, right? Games, basic games. Do you have children who are in gaming in your classes? They don't tell you, but they all are, right? Well, forget children, adults are. I know nobody would agree, but we all play some or the other game. It could be as basic as a Candy Crush, the most popular one, or it could be a very advanced one like Call of Duty. But we all do. Everything is connected. Everything is on your smart TV now, from a Netflix to a Nintendo Wii to a Xbox. Are we preparing our children? Are we? Are we giving them those tools? Are we helping them learn those tools that will make them think critically from a creative bent of mind and enter the world with more employability and a higher skill set? Well, we definitely are attempting to do that. But do we have the right tools? Let's look at that. So I'm just going to spend 5 minutes on this. This is something which is brand new. This is something which is not an Adobe global thing. It is an Adobe India only. For the lack of a better word, I've just kept the name Connect Ed, right? We may change it later if I find a much nicer name, but for the time being, this is what it is, right? So why are we coming up with this? Now, I've spent last 10, 15 minutes talking about the research and why we are coming up with this entire thing. The employability, the IoT, the Internet of Things, the machine learning, the virtual reality, the augmented reality, data sciences, big data, analytics, and it's time for so-called emerging markets, so-called countries like India to find our place in the sun. We have the biggest talent pool, which is probably not being, and that comes to the question that you were talking about a little while back on the population, right? On one side, we say, yeah, we have the biggest youth population. The other side, the employers say, unfortunately, they're good for nothing. And that's the bitter truth. We have the youth. We have the demographics. We are possibly one of the largest potential markets for every major company in the world. But are we really there? Are our children or are our youth actually employable? Do they have the skills to either work for someone or be an entrepreneur? Now, we have moved away as a government of India. We are working with the government of India on the Skill India project as well. Are we moving away from the old ITIs that were teaching welding and carpentry and the blue-collar jobs to more white-collar ones? Are we teaching them the skills to design on the web? Are we teaching them how to code for machine learning? Hence this. So we're talking about not a curriculum. We're not talking about a digital content. We are not talking about giving you a content that you will use to teach the students. What we're talking about is activities. So as an example, one of the examples that I gave you earlier was on history. Digital content, great, you already have that. There's no point in my giving you more. And again, as an example, solar system. Forget solar system. Let's talk about Shakespeare. Let's talk about Sherlock Holmes in English literature. How do we make a child retain those concepts? So we've created something where we've picked up certain activities from each class, where it's not specific to any major curriculum, though it's broadly based on CBSE. But there is an expectation that, say, by class 6 or by class 7, a child should know these concepts in a science, in an English, or a social science, right? So we've created some 5-odd activities per class, per subject. And how do you get them to creatively show that concept rather than write a paragraph, learn from any content, or use an app or a software tool to depict that? What's that's doing is creating that giving freedom to the child to create something with their own imagination. However, learning a new tool. Now, anybody has ever dealt with an advertising agency? Advertising agency? Ever dealt with an advertising agency? Web design companies, when you create a websites, right? Now, all of these guys, when the people who create a website have a job because they have skills on these tools, and so on and so forth. And that's just one small example of it. Just 2 minutes, right? We're talking about workshops where we are capacity building the teachers to teach those, not really giving you a lesson plan, right? We're talking about a global platform for the teachers to engage on Adobe Education Exchange with teachers across the globe. So, ma'am, you're sitting in Dubai, can talk to your peers in New Zealand, right? We're talking about Adobe Creative Cloud, the 20 tools, 15 web apps. We're talking about contests where there is something called Behance, which is the LinkedIn and the Facebook of the creative world. Anybody who's anybody in the creative world is there. Portfolios, contests, maybe the first prize winner goes to an Adobe International contest, spends a week, 10 days with the Adobe design team in San Jose, in the US, comes to our Noida campus, works with our design team, right? Those kind of things, and of course, the certifications for the teachers, and that's just the start of it, right? So we have that advantage there that we have the integrated technologies, we're talking to the industry and bringing in what the industry is asking for the skills into the products that we are giving to the students here, right? I just wanted to touch upon this. There's a lot more in this entire program that we can talk on a one-on-one basis as and when there is a requirement on when we reach out to you, you know, in the next few months. But this is something that we are really proud of because it's not a money-making thing for Adobe. And it is not a global thing, as I said earlier. It's an India thing, which is being created by us in India as a part that we want to reach out and we want to give those tools to our students to work on. Right. I think I'll just end there. So, you know, thank you.
I thank Mr. Gaurav Kanwal, Head of SMB and Channels in South Asia Adobe Systems, for enlightening us with a wonderful presentation, and none of us get bored. It was quite exciting. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
And I think we also highlighted that it's a made in India product. Absolutely. For Make in India.
For Make in India, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's quite a unique thing. Yeah. Yeah. I hope a lot of school decision makers are here. They might be interested to interact with you on a one-on-one basis.
Absolutely.
I just request Bindu Sharma, Principal, Army Public School, they are going to come on stage and hand over a moment to Mr. Gaurav Kanwal. A big round of applause for him.
Thank you.
It's a wonderful. Can we have a moment, please? Yeah.
I'll come down, man.
Thanks a lot for giving us insight into the digital space, what can be done. Something beyond the smart classes.